Now, the ongoing political crisis in Rivers State has continued unabated. The presidency on Monday said President Bola Tinubu will not take sides between Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, and Governor Siminalayi Fubara, the two characters at the center of this crisis. This followed a jab by the State Commissioner for Information and Communications, Joseph Johnson, on the Abdullahi Ganduje-led All Progressives Congress, where he said Ganduje had no legal grounds to talk about the impeachment of Governor Fubara. In a separate development, the federal government has announced its plans to embark on a comprehensive review, restructuring, and reform of the National Youth Service Corps in a bid to meet up with the demands of the future. Now, the announcement was made by the Minister of Youth Development, Dr. Jamila Ibrahim, at the opening ceremony of the maiden meeting of NYSC management with heads of Corps-producing institutions in Nigeria, held at the National Judicial Institute in Abuja on Monday. And according to the minister, over 5,000 Corps members will have their entrepreneurial ventures funded with up to 10 million naira. For a conversation around these subjects and more, let's turn now to Dr. Sam Amadi, the director of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Thank you for being on the show. It is always a pleasure to have you speaking with us here on Newsday.
Thank you and good afternoon.
Well, Dr. Amadi, let's talk about this issue in Rivers State. It seems like round 2 of the war is being initiated as we are hearing that Governor Fubara will be probing the activities of the previous administration. That would be the Wike administration, within of which there is that blood feud. And we do also know that he was part of that administration as well. And I'm speaking of the present Governor Fubara. What do you make of these developments and the way it could roll out for Rivers State in general?
Well, thank you. I think first is that probe is a neutral word. I mean, probe is normal in terms of governance, but the way it's weaponized in Nigeria, so probe now becomes more like a major political event. Ordinarily, when a government finishes its tenure, there could be reports from citizens, from interest group, watchdog, whistleblowers, highlighting aspects of governance that probably contravene the rules, criminal in nature, or even we are, maybe one can say, didn't go to due process or didn't give value to states. So the consequence of that is that people will petition and institutions will carry out oversight, probe. The ones that need to go with prosecution will happen. The rest will remain the way it is. But what we are seeing now, is that it's being made as if it's a government, a regime, is probably in administration probing the other administration because they had issue. And so that's what makes it a little bit problematic. Again, the question is, how will it play out? This governor used to be one of the leading officials, the accountant general at a point. He was accountant to the governor. He was one of the closest persons to the governor, and he handpicked him, shepherded him, brutalized every other person, refused people to pick form. You know, that was the height of violation of constitutional right. We knew about a potential governorship aspirant of PDP who was put in detention by Governor Wike then throughout the duration of the nomination, just because from Atiku's camp then it was supposed, this guy challenged, indicated he was going to run for election. So everything that could be done illegally to make sure this guy did his SIM became the governor was done. And so the question then is, this probe, will it slice off aspects of the governance where he was involved as accountant to the government office and accountant general of the state? This probe, will it skip where he played key role? And of course, during that run-up, we know that EFCC had also placed some kind of soft notice on him that there were actually drama in Port Harcourt where EFCC tried to, maybe arrest, block the accountant general. hidden basically until he got nominated and won the election as governor and now. So this is really interesting. Of course, the governor didn't hide the fact that this is a part of the fight. This is phase 2 of the fight. Wike doesn't seem to have support of many people in terms of the way he has conducted himself. I mean, look, he had issues with Amechi. He had issue with Omeha. He had issue with almost everybody. And so, in a sense, there is a sense of justice that he will be, because he tried to probe Amechi, did a white paper, and they had to use judicial process to stall and forsake that. So he's going through the same meal that he passed Amechi. So in a sense, fair. But again, how this will affect governance in Rivers State, because this is politically contrived. It doesn't mean that there are a lot of things to probe. I mean, I would assume there are few governors in this country with the level of corruption in this country, few, countable, maybe one or two, who would pass scrutiny at the level of financial management. I mean, I'll be surprised if there are more than two who would look clean after being put to a re-probe. So the fact that Wike is going to a probe, clearly there will be things that are not properly done, corrupt, and I will bet sometimes near criminal. That's the tale of governance in Nigeria. But the fact of the matter is that if they didn't have this conflict, would there be a probe? If Simi tied on with his governor, former governor, and Wike did not probably overreach himself in managing that relationship, would there be this probe? In an ideal situation, this probe will be routine. When the government leaves, citizens will write petition on what they saw, whistleblowers, centers, and then each governor, ex-governor, will face probe, prosecution, investigation, case by case, according to what is submitted to the regulatory anti-corruption or the police or CIA or DSS or EFCC or ICPC, as the case might be. But what we see here is dramatized political event called probe, which, yes, would go through some level of evidential hearing if it's done by the House. To think about Kaduna El-Rufai and his successor, some evidential hearing, maybe for the House, some kind of effort to do due process. But ultimately, it's politics. It's political fight back. And maybe it's some kind of comeuppance. It's justice for Wike, who has also tried to do that to Amechi. And the game continues. And unfortunately, public interest may not be well served in all these undertakings.
In this tit-for-tat politics we seem to have dramatized in front of our screen, to be honest, between the lawyers and the journalists, they have their hands full covering this for the next couple of weeks. As we know, this isn't even close to the end of it. But what do you make of the way Governor Fubara is handling this situation? We know that he is eradicating his camp from of Wike's supporters. We do know that the 27 lawmakers, they are not allowed to carry out their duties. And we also know that there's a new appointment of the Attorney General, the Commissioner for Justice in Rivers State, Dagogo Ibora. What do you make of his appointment and the ousting of the former Commissioner of Justice who would not take up that new position in a new ministry and decided to resign?
Well, I think this is inevitable. I mean, the governor must have an attorney general he trusts and relies. I mean, he can't have an attorney general in a war. The governor is in a war situation with his former boss and former governor Wike. War, clear, that's what it is. So it's actually wrong and presumptive to think that the governor will return Wike's loyalist. And the former attorney general makes it clear that he is for Wike, and clearly he should have resigned. And he did at the beginning of this conflict, but they were all restored through that so-called presidential settlement deal that is now totally, disgraced or disregarded. So that deal brought him back, and he there's no way he can be the Attorney General to the new governor when he's loyal to the old governor, who is not making it any confused. He's not confused about the fact that he's fighting Simi, the new governor. So he has to go. And the appointment of a new attorney general, a new senior lawyer, is fine. I mean, that's the beginning. You need the attorney general to run a government. And then the way Simi is removing all the loyalists of Wike is also the right thing to do. Because, look, commissioners are personal staff to the governor. They are supposed to work with the governor. The executive power is in the governor. And the governor cannot share executive power or delegate it to enemies who clearly do not identify with him. You know, the solution to all this problem is that, look, the Governor Simi has to be allowed to be governor and exercise all the powers of a governor. And whether he's grateful or ungrateful, I've made that point clear. There's a moral dimension to the conflict, the fact that Wike did everything for him and he's, quote unquote, seemed to pay him back with ingratitude. That's a moral profile. But the legality of it is that he's the governor and shouldn't be forced to share gubernatorial power. If I was advising the actors, I would say, look, let's asterisk the fact that this is an ungrateful person, moral, bad character. But again, let's move on to say, this is a new governor. He has chosen to forsake those who brought him, but he has to now act within the law and govern. And so far, if you ask me, I mean, this crisis started with the legislators resigning from the party. And clearly it was a strategy to cause him a problem. But they hurt themselves because the law is clear. They have to leave, the house. And if they do so, he has a right to appoint they have to appoint a new House of Assembly leadership, even though it's laughable and comical. A house of 4 people, I mean, it doesn't really make much sense, but that's what it is. And so each of these practices highlight legal crisis, legal clarity, moral crisis, moral crisis. So for the legal, I think the governor acts within his power in the things he has done. The executive order he issued, for example, regarding the movement of the House could be a little bit gray because executive orders are exercised not to impinge on the powers of the other branch of government. You exercise executive power to within the executive branch to kind of manage the executive business. So executive order directed at the legislature or against the judiciary will be void. Executive order used to remove the power of individuals will be void. That's the theory of executive order. But otherwise, he probably could exercise the power of sovereignty to say we need to restructure the building. I mean, because even though the legislature is independent, the infrastructure that support them oftentimes are provided from the executive branch. So apart from that, every other action has taken are within his powers as governor. And that's the real point here, that we should now disentangle emotional, personal feelings and hurts from the fact that a governor elected should be allowed to exercise gubernatorial power in line with the law and the Constitution. And then wait for him politically when you could mobilize if you have the strength to vote him out or even recall him through a due process intervention. But at this point, it looks like desperation on both sides is building up to where we're going to see deliberate transgression of the law. We could see, if desperation increases, wanton violence and disregard of law to maybe reinsert ourselves, one party reinsert itself back to the driving seat. As at now, Simi seems to have control of the resources and the instrument of power. Has got an order, or some of his lawyers have got an order banning the Order 24 from acting. They need to go to the Court of Appeal, get it vacated, get to the same court to vacate it. So as at now, he holds the aces. And I think it's really political realism that we say, okay, you know what, this is a governor, and he's done what he's done. We allow him to exercise his power, but then politically we can checkmate him.
Very, very well said. And so many idiomatic expressions come to mind. No honor amongst thieves, biting the hand that feeds you, the elephants, the grass suffers when elephants fight. We could go on and on with this Nigerian political Shakespearean tragedy. But let's move on to other news. This is talking about the NYSC. They seem to be wanting to take a bit of a revamp and are saying that they're trying to, well, the federal government is trying to turn it into a revenue-generating agency with some other reforms proposed. What do you make of these and the actuality of the implementation of some of these reforms?
I think the NYSC needs major radical reform, but I don't think one of those reforms should be for it to be a revenue generating agency. I mean, look, it looks like because we are fiscally challenged. I mean, we now see money everywhere. How do you create? And again, the irony is that we'll probably end up generating nothing. I mean, this obsession with revenue without thinking around productivity and structural issues. The NYSC is not designed to raise revenue. The NYSC is an intervention originally designed to create, tolerance among Nigerians, make us integrate ourselves culturally, and maybe help our younger ones as they're leaving school at a very critical age to have a sense of national diversity. Now, I have argued many years ago that we need to reconstruct NYSC in 3 ways. First, I don't think we really need to have all graduates of Nigerian universities and polytechnics go to the NYSC. I think we can conceive it as an elite meritocratic platform. So, like in Israel, I mean, most of the top students will go to IDF. If you go to IDF, Israeli Defense Force, to get that exposure and to contribute. So, we can actually reduce the NYSC group to maybe some kind of meritocratic class. I don't know how you know it, but essentially put them under serious formation. The structure is loose. I mean, they go for a camp that's more like play, more like some drill, run around, exercise themselves, laugh, and then they get farmed out to private sector here and there. So the first is decide whether you want to make all graduates to go to this process that's not value-adding much, or you want to make it some kind of special sport. People who go there, that's one. Second decision to make is we can actually deploy them to development and keep an eye on them. So instead of having them work for private sector, let them be seen as people, for example, literacy education. So you deploy them to agro. So serve strategic national interests. And then they build skills and competencies and some sense of patriotism. And then they get a badge, some kind of entitlement. So that if you're going to fly out of the country, you're going to go by air, there's some sense in which you see yourself as somebody who's truly serving your country and receiving some measure of state devotion and support. And that ties back to the issue of why it should be select. I mean, there are special process to recruit the best and the brightest and make them an elite squad so that they learn, they fit into the new technocratic class. And the third reform will now be that you structure the interventions in a way that they have periodic boot camps where they are trained, they are taught lectures on patriotism, not just about entrepreneurship to make sugar, how to make soap and all those mundane things. But essentially, you want to spend that 1 year becoming more Nigerian, becoming, kind of motivated to become a champion of the Nigerian cause. Especially now that we are having disruptive and divisive, tendencies facilitated by social media and all that. This is a time now to reconstruct this service year and make it a year to counter this divisive narrative, so they have regular, maybe every quarter, serious boot camp where they are trained, they are made to understand why they should develop a renewed hope in the future of this country. So the critical problem with NYSC is that it's not focused on achieving a clear developmental agenda. And if you design that agenda, you ask yourself, do you have to bring all these Nigerian people to go through this loose process, pay them small money, farm them out to companies? Some people come to us and say, just sign for me, don't pay me, sign for me, I'm doing NYSC. They're doing nothing. So I think that forgetting about revenue generation, that's not the point. Strengthen the rigor, strengthen the national orientation component of this program, and strengthen the national development component so that these people make sacrifice for the nation, and the nation is an impact on them and give them status and give them some kind of insignia, some kind of recognition that they earn something, not just financial, but be seen as heroes, as people who have been prepared for the next phase of national development. That's what NYSC needs at this point.
Well,
and not revenue generation.
Very eloquently said, as always. It's great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation.